My name is Katelyn Peil. I am currently a beverage director for a restaurant group in the Seattle area. I have over 18 years of experience in the hospitality sector, with just about 15 of those at my current employer, where I'm in charge of overseeing beverage programs for individually run locations within a multi-concept restaurant group. I definitely want to thank the IBWSS and the Beverage Trade Network for having me here this morning to offer my experience on what key performance indicators I use when I consider adding a new brand to the restaurant offerings and what I'm ultimately looking for in developing a partnership with a supplier. And although most of these metrics are applicable to any brand that I choose to add, there are some specific metrics that I take into consideration for using private label products. Private label products have been a rapidly increasing sector of the beverage industry. According to VinePair.com, in 2020, the United States imported 383 million liters of bulk wine, which is up 62% in the past decade. And in the US, production of bulk wine accounts for 65% of exported wine by volume. So we're obviously talking about a large sector and a very rapidly increasing sector, which has no signs of slowing down. And although a lot of this increase has historically been led by larger off-premise and retailer accounts, there is room for successful and profitable partnerships between suppliers and on-premise accounts and other smaller operations. Doesn't necessarily have to be restaurants, but obviously that is where I lie. The on-premise industry is up against unprecedented challenges like we all have. The past couple years have been incredibly tough. There's been an increase in food prices, shipping costs, production limitations, supply chain issues, and also the increase in price of labor and standard of living compounded with unparalleled labor shortages. So now more than ever, these operations are looking for creative and new revenue streams to increase profit margin, and building proprietary brands is a successful way to do that. Profit margin alone is definitely the key driving metric that I use when I'm deciding on a new placement for the menu or a new opportunity to build a private label product. Beverage directors have more responsibility in the current climate to try to help offset these increased costs in what's already a very low margin industry for the average restaurant. And consequently, margins are more important than ever. My goal as a beverage director is to ensure that each product I select has an intended purpose for the program and to provide my guests with a unique and good valued but high quality product while paying attention to the bottom line and while providing profitability. At the end of the day, all concepts are striving to be a healthy business and are trying to maximize their return on investment on the purchase of their products. Profit margins are a critical part of the equation of understanding your business's overall financial health, and understanding that helps to develop new opportunities to be able to increase that profit margin where applicable. I am going to assume that everyone in this room is familiar with what a profit margin is, but just humor me, I'm going to go over it really quickly because it is such an important piece of the puzzle. So margin at its most basic level is a measure of profitability. It's a ratio calculation which shows how much of your overall sales the company keeps. For our more visual learners, myself included, I've included this very basic example that shows you just how easy it is to calculate what your profit margin will look like. So for this example, we have, always in profit margins, we have the revenue, which is what I am going to be selling this product for to my guest. We also have the cost of goods sold, which is what that product cost me to purchase wholesale. And then we have the gross profit, which is what the actual restaurant is going to keep. So for this very easy calculation, let's assume that the revenue, what I'm going to be selling this product for, is $50. And I have purchased this product, my cost of goods sold, for $10. the very simple equation here, minusing that 10 from that 50, is going to give us that $40. So we have $40 gross profit. And then to get that into that equation, we're going to go ahead and divide the gross profit by the revenue, what I'm selling that for. So in this case, $40 divided by $50. And that is going to equal 0.8. I've done the math for you here, so you don't have to do it. And then to calculate that into that percentage, you're just going to multiply that 0.8 by 100, and you're going to get that 80% profit margin. So that is 80% gross profit. And remember, gross profit is different than your net profit, but you're going to have an 80% profit margin on this particular item. And I know that it seems like it's pretty simple math, and really it is, but it's vital that both parties, suppliers and the on-premise people, understand the basics of costs and margins so you can discuss those metrics right up front and know that the direction that's needed for the development of that product. And obviously, you have a little bit more flexibility in the private label sector. This allows for a lot more flexibility in curating those particular products for specific business needs, most importantly being your profit margin. And profit margin alone makes for private label products a very desirable option for on-premise locations. And for these smaller accounts, working directly with suppliers can help take out the middleman of these large distributors who can often be driven by volumes of sales rather than helping smaller accounts find products that will coincide with their unique market needs and very specific business goals. So let's get into more of the restaurant and supplier relationships, as there are definitely some other types of metrics that I personally take into consideration when I am landing on a supplier. So it's important that we learn about one another as customers to ensure that we're going to be compatible business partners. I'm pretty sure it's pretty safe to say we've all made that mistake where we jump into a relationship like a little too early without all that information that we wish that we had up front. So I'm not here to tell you how to run your social lives. That's for you to decide. But when it comes to business, it's vitally important that the vetting process is pretty thorough. So we want to make sure that we take a little bit of time and get to know one another. On my end, On my end, it's important for me to understand that the supplier is in good standing with current and former customers that they have worked with. And then on the other hand, it's also important that the supplier is comfortable with taking on the operation as a customer. We're often talking about a really large amount of product and some serious sizable cash flow. So it's really important that those things are compatible and we have the same core values. So the core values is a thing that I'm always looking for in a supplier. I want to make sure that those core values are equal to my operation and that we have the same goals that will lay the groundwork for successful product development. There also must be initiative from that supplier to demonstrate awareness to the customer's unique requirements. The beverage industry is not a one-size-fits-all industry, as we're all pretty familiar with. And smaller operations lend to a different set of challenges to the formula of larger retailers. As a supplier, try to become familiar with the demographic of that particular market and help isolate key target metrics of that demographic. Doing this can successfully help develop a brand that can capitalize on those specific metrics. As a supplier, it's important to show willingness to discover what specific business needs are and then lay the groundwork that will help build a mutually beneficial partnership and ensure the success for both parties. More often than not, volume tends to be built off-premise, which I know is a motivating factor for most suppliers to want to build a private label product. But the opportunities to work with smaller operations should not be left on the table. Because although volume is typically built off-premise, brands are built on-premise, and successful brand building will lead to the increase in volume. So although the operation will technically be the customer of the supplier, it is important that both sides of the partnership feel comfortable working with one another. And now that we've taken a little bit of time, gotten to know each other a little bit, we want to get into the good stuff and talk about money. a very important metric. Money is obviously an important metric to consider with any business deal, and when it comes to finances, transparency and setting expectation early are very key. So let's discuss that cost. Cost is obviously a driving force for anyone to determine if they're going to be adding any new brand to a program. So we want to negotiate and settle on this cost up front. And further, we want to determine if there's going to be an actual written contract in place or not. Is this a handshake deal, or will there be some written contracts in place? For me, as an operation, I always consider if that supplier actually has sizable cash flow to ensure that the project can come to fruition. I know that we're all in sales, we all want to make those big deals, but do not sell me anything that you cannot fulfill. So ensure that, one, that the product is there and that there's enough cash flow to actually ensure that the product can come to fruition. Payment terms are important to negotiate the payment structure up front. Who is going to be responsible for the carrying costs throughout the project? Will the operation, me, need to pay up front in entirety? Am I going to pay a deposit? Do I need to deposit 50% up front? Is there going to be a payment structure quarterly throughout the project? Will we be just paying as we go throughout the project upon delivery? Is there an option for financial advantage, such as financing, or any option for extended terms? Will there be an option for postponement of debt if a financial crisis hits, if any unexpected tariffs are thrown onto the project midway, God forbid, another pandemic hits? If there's anything that we've learned over the past couple years, it's important to have contingency plans in place for things that go awry. We're constantly pivoting in this industry, and this plays here as well. We need to have some confidence with one another built in stability and reliance. Reliability from the supplier equals loyalty from the customer, and that is a foundation of a potential long-term partnership. Not all on-premise employees are also familiar with the sales and supplier side of the industry, so just make sure that you're using transparency in all conversations. They may not understand that suppliers don't want to get stuck with privately labeled inventory if that operation cannot fulfill their end of the contract for one reason or another. They may not understand that the supplier would prefer that that product come off their books as fast as possible. So just ensure that both parties are on the same page early on, use that transparency, and this is going to help eliminate any problems or miscommunications about financial expectations going forward. Tied into the monetary terms, other metrics that I'm using when I'm deciding on a new brand or placement or private label product are also volume and delivery terms. These are important metrics that we all need to take into consideration, but can be a particularly tough challenge for smaller operations. For a commitment minimum, do you, as a supplier, have a minimum commitment level just to even get the project off the ground? And is this different if the product is going to be domestic or imported? Both parties obviously need to ensure that the commitment level is agreed upon before moving forward. And this ties into the opportunity of taking that initiative to learn the specific needs of your customer. And you can work with them to help create new ideas and develop new channels of potential revenue streams to ensure that the volume commitment is actually worth it to both parties. Within that commitment minimum, inventory storage. This is a particular challenge for smaller operations. We don't often have large warehouses to store a lot of packaged goods, so this can actually make or break a deal for me. Do you, as the supplier, have offsite storage warehouse that you can house that inventory for me? And if you don't have a warehouse, is there another offsite storage solution that you can help me with, or do I need to organize that on my own? As long as I'm aware of those challenges, it won't necessarily make or break a deal, but I don't have the storage to be able to, store all those packaged goods. And then also within that, depending on that inventory storage, delivery terms. Am I going to have to take that all at once? Can I take it over time? Is there going to be a minimum case amount to get a delivery? And ultimately, will there be a depletion timeline that must be met to complete that whole project? And then after we've discussed the expectations of the cost, the payment, and delivery terms, we ultimately need to decide on what type of product we want to use, and this is where the actual product development and collaboration there comes into play. As a beverage director, I always ask myself, what is the intended purpose for this product, and how will I be able to use it for my operation? Volume and cross-utilization are always the goal, and quality to value ratio is a very strong determining factor on product development. Will the product be domestic or imported, as each of these has their own metrics involved? While both can have challenges of labeling requirements, imported products have timing schedules, customs, shipping costs, etc., whereas a domestic product could lack these additional costs and time constraints. So when I'm starting in that product development, I automatically am going to say, are we talking about a domestic product, an import product, and how do those factors and options affect a timeline, and what does the lead time look like between that domestic and imported product? And within domestic versus imported comes the choice on deciding on the actual base product that we want to work with. Two main styles to decide between, namely being a negociant private label product or already using a branded product and maybe building a proprietary product for me within that already branded product. Negociant style. Negociant and wine merchants have a long established history in the beverage industry. Classically defined in the wine sense, a negociant is a merchant who buys grapes, grape juice, fermented wine from growers and vineyards. The most standard formula being purchasing a complete wine in bulk and then bottling it, labeling it, and selling it wholesale. Oftentimes, they haven't had the best reputation in the classic wine world, as they became kind of more associated with capitalizing solely on the packaging, marketing, and sales of the wine, which really is not that, it is business after all, but really rather than the focus being on the hard work of the growers and winemakers who are growing the fruit and then harvesting the fruit, crushing, fermenting, making the actual wine. This is really an unfair assessment, and I do think that the growth of the private label market has really helped to evolve this perception. There is definitely a new generation of beverage consumers, and they are helping shift the market, and there's definitely some opportunity to capitalize on that by building your own proprietary brand. This new beverage consumer tends to be gravitating more towards alternative packaging, consuming wine more shortly after purchase, more often than actually collecting wine. They are becoming more craft conscious, and this has created more of a demand for the market to be very transparent on process and really including specifications such as specific vineyard sites. Are there reputable winemakers behind this program? Products that support agendas with social justice issues or climate change issues, sustainability, organic, etc. So choosing a negociant style product does allow you to take a more proactive approach in building that proprietary brand. You can adjust the customization to target your specific business needs. Like I mentioned before, margin being one of the most key determining factors, but this also can really help you include building exclusivity. Building your own proprietary brand with a distinctive product that cannot be found elsewhere. We live in the age of all the information at our fingertips. You could literally go to, nameanywine.com and find all the information on who thinks what about your product. When you are building a proprietary brand that's not found elsewhere, you have the control to determine the narrative of that and tell the story of your own product. Also, using a negociant style product, you can often find higher quality to value ratio since there is no established brand already. But on the other hand, choosing this method can potentially mean a larger financial commitment, a larger product commitment, and also mean a longer timeline. And then conversely, on the other hand, when I'm considering on which product to develop, I also weigh the options of choosing to build a proprietary product within using an already branded product. By using an already established brand, this tends to lean to a more reactive approach versus the proactive approach of a negociant style. This could be a smaller scale opportunity with less ability to customize as many specifications as possible, but still can be a great option for the right operation. This can obviously help wineries, distillers, brewers offload a surplus of inventory. This can have a potentially faster timeline, as these can be more opportunistic or spontaneous partnerships that can tend to come to fruition quickly. I also always usually consider, am I going to use the reputation of that current brand that I'm choosing to work with? Are we using that name recognition to help sell that product? But then I'm also thinking, is that also going to affect the cost and the bottom line of that product? And within that reputation, are there going to be some cross-marketing opportunities between the two partners for that specific product? This tends to be a smaller commitment of product, less of a financial burden. But then I also always ask myself, will there be consistency with product supply? If this product takes off well, are we going to be able to continue this going forward? I also usually take into consideration if that already established brand will actually have the time to focus on my proprietary brand within their brand, if they're taking the time and energy to still be building up their own brand. I also weigh the options of exclusivity versus non-exclusivity within that. Is this going to be a product that's going to be specifically made for my establishment, or will you, as the supplier, be selling this in any other area of the market? A lot of wineries are used to more direct-to-consumer sales or retail sales, which has a completely different sales structure and margin markups than on-premise sales. So making sure that we both know where this product is going to be utilized so we're not undermining one another by costing it completely different in the same market. So using already branded products does tend to offer a little bit less flexibility to adjust to the margin, which can oftentimes diminish the quality to value ratio, since you can't undermine the integrity of an already established brand to help meet a higher margin opportunity. It's definitely not as easy to adjust pricing to fit margin on an already branded product. While deciding which route to go, it is crucial to understand and weigh the advantages and disadvantages of both the negociant style and an already branded product and what is best for your operation. Regardless of which route you choose to take, a non-negotiable metric is the actual quality of the product. As a beverage director, I need to stand behind the integrity of our operation, and all products must always have an intended purpose. I will never sacrifice quality for profit. A final metric that I take into consideration is the actual level of involvement in the process. Is there an option for me or our team to be involved with the process, and what does this involvement level look like? When it comes to the physical product, is there an option to participate in blending trials, barrel tasting, harvest, crush, bottling, etc.? Obviously, this is a little more location dependent. You know, I'm lucky, I'm in the Seattle area. I work in the heart of the Woodinville wine country where there are over 100 wineries within a 5-mile radius. So I might have the option to be able to participate in this. And what will the level of involvement be on the actual design of the packaging? Is there an option for me to have choice in glass color or bottle shape, closure choice, capsule color, the actual design of the front and back labels? And how do these options affect the bottom line? There's small opportunities here to be able to cater to your operations. A lot of wineries, suppliers, people who are making the products aren't thinking about the actual operations for that particular place. I have literally cut wines from the program because they did not fit into my fridge. That really special tall bottle you thought looked really cool has no option because it physically can't fit into that bar. I would have to sacrifice all the other wine to be able to fit that one in there. So with bottle shape, with storage, oftentimes like the closure choice, if I have two similar items and one is a Stelvin closure and one is a traditional cork, that Stelvin closure might have a higher choice of getting into the glass pour program because of ease of use and efficiency for the bar team. We're pumping through that really quickly, so I don't need to worry as much about cellaring laying down those products. So small changes like that really have the opportunity to be able to really cater that to your operation and help make that sale. Furthermore, will you be managing labeling requirements and navigating compliance issues if they arise? Will there be an option for any staff tastings or training or education around this proprietary project? We all know that the servers are the ones that are doing the grassroots efforts and selling this wine. They're the ones that are hitting the tables. So if they have any sort of level of involvement or ownership of that product, it really helps you increase volume in sales. I've seen it happen time and time again. So in sum, true partnership is really the key to success. So let's always have collaboration over closed doors. Although major determining factors really come down to the cost and the pricing of that item, potential profit margin, and the actual quality of that product, there are a lot of other factors involved in making decisions on brand development and placement. I want to work with a supplier that carries the same core values as our operation. That supplier needs to show willingness to discover what specific business needs I have, and through other metrics such as payment and delivery terms, inventory management, and actual collaboration on product development, we can create the opportunity to build an equal partnership that will ensure success for both parties. The profit of your business is always dictated by the quality of the services and products that you offer. And by finding a good supplier that you can rely on, I am confident it's a winning strategy to integrate private label products into on-premise and smaller locations. Again, my name is Katelyn Peil. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I do have a couple minutes left if anyone has any questions that I did not cover, or like everyone's favorite Zoom meeting, I finished a couple minutes early and you can have those 3 minutes back to yourself. Thank you, guys. Anyone? Hold on, she's going to come with a mic so we can all hear.
Thank you. Hi. Hello? Testing. Hello? Oh.
There it is.
Okay. Working now. Sorry, Dan Irving from WX Brands. Just curious if you could just talk a little bit about Heavy Restaurant Group. I know you guys are based in the Northwest, and that's, I think, where mainly your footprint is. And in terms of sourcing wines, what regions and things you're looking for, international versus domestic, Northwest versus California, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. So Heavy Restaurant Group is a Seattle-based restaurant group. Obviously, things have been changing over the past couple years, but we had about 10 locations in the Seattle area, and this is a multi-concept restaurant group, and all of our locations are actually individually ran. So we do obviously love wine. We started originally with one wine bar location in the heart of Woodinville Wine Community, which actually didn't really exist when we first started. We had Chateau Ste. Michelle kind of in the backyard, which really helped bring a lot. There were a lot of people already making wine in the area, but nothing like it has blown up today. So from there, we grew, and although we do really love the Washington wine industry, we really do take pride on the fact that we have a worldly wine list. And so our wine list is really catered to what we do as food, which is kind of just a very general Northwest-style cuisine. We're rapidly making changes, and we work really well directly with the culinary team to ensure that our wines pair really well with the food. So although we are in the heart of the Washington wine community, we do really source wines from everywhere. The past 2 years, it has changed the scope of the menu. So going from 85 wines by the glass and 500 by the bottle to currently about 30 by the glass and about 50. And really, it's still a large program, but shifting to a QR code, we still also have to have a printable menu, and we used to have kind of like a large menu. So we've narrowed it down to kind of like a single legal size sheet. But I'm able to make changes really quickly, which is awesome. We're going through much more inventory, and we're being able to highlight a lot more wines from around the world. Did I cover what you asked? Yeah. Anyone else?
Questions? Anyone else have questions?
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.